Good morning, class. In the previous lesson, we have learned about pollination, their types, and the different agents of pollination. Now, today, we are going to learn about a very important process, that is the process of fertilization. So, let's recap what is a pollination. The transfer of pollen grains from the male part of a flower to the female part of a flower. Now, in the process of fertilization, we are going to learn what happens when the male part of a flower reaches the female part and the various stages of fertilization. Fertilization, the fusion of the male cell with the female cell, is known as fertilization. So, after the process of pollination that we have learned in the previous lesson, after reaching the stigma, that is the pollen, when it reaches to the female part of a flower, the pollen grains develop a pollen tube. This is the pollen tube, which carries a male cell on its tip. So the pollen tube is developed and carries a male cell. Next, now the pollen tube travel through the style and reach the ovule inside the ovary, and the ovule contains a female cell. When the male cell passes through the pollen tube, when the male cell passes, as you can see, the sperm cells and the male cell passes through the pollen tube, it reaches the ovary. So when it reaches the ovary, it unites with the female cell. Once again, when the male cell passes through the pollen tube, it reaches the ovary and it unites with the female cell of a flower. As a result, when it reaches over there, that is the male. Now you can see in this diagram, the male cells have reached now the female cell. As a result, a single cell or zygote is produced, which later develops into a new plant. The process of fusion of the male cell with the female cell, the male cell with the female cell, is called as fertilization. Let us revise once again. This process now is an important process. After reaching the stigma, the pollen grains develop a pollen tube, which carries a male cell on its tip. The pollen tube travels through the style and reaches the ovule inside the ovary. The ovule contains female cells or the egg cells. When the male cell passes through the pollen tube and reaches the ovary, it unites with a female cell. As a result, a single cell, a zygote, is produced, which later develops into a new plant. So class, This is all we'll be learning about the process of fertilization. So for today's assignment, explain. You have to write in detail the process of fertilization in plants. And children, please draw the diagram.